He wasn't causing trouble. He was fixing a light for kids at the park. But moments later, a racist cop had him pinned, cuffed, and treated like a criminal. What no one realized was this quiet man was a decorated veteran who once risked his life to save strangers. And when the truth came out, the courtroom fell silent as a 4-star general stood to speak. What really happened? Before we dive in, get comfortable, hit like, and subscribe so you don't miss powerful stories like this one. He didn't argue. He didn't shout. He just stood there, still holding the maintenance checklist in one hand and a wrench in the other, while 2 officers pinned him to the ground like he was dangerous. And the worst part? He had just finished fixing the broken light over the playground swing. It was around 11:40 a.m. on a Thursday in Winston Ridge, a quiet suburban neighborhood outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. The kind of place where kids still rode their bikes in the cul-de-sac and neighbors waved from porch swings. That morning, Marcus Ellison had started his rounds early. The city had sent in a request to check out the faulty lighting in the park, after a few parents reported flickering overheads near the basketball court. Marcus wasn't just any worker. He was precise, methodical, always on time. A 44-year-old veteran, he'd spent most of his adult life as a pararescueman in the Air Force. 3 tours, 2 commendations, 1 back injury that never fully healed. After retirement, he took the job with municipal maintenance because it was close to home and let him care for his mother, who'd had a stroke 2 years earlier. That morning, he wore his Navy city-issued polo shirt with Facilities City of Winston, stitched in gold thread. He had an ID badge clipped to his belt. Anyone who looked twice would have seen it. But not everyone looked twice. While Marcus stood adjusting the power box behind the equipment shed, a woman across the park had called 911. She said there was a man tampering with wires and walking around with tools like he's casing the area. When dispatch asked what he looked like, she replied, "Black male, tall, beard, kind of intense looking." That's all it took. Minutes later, 2 patrol cars pulled up along the curb near the swing set. The officers didn't ask who he was. They didn't check his badge. They just shouted, "Step away from the building! Hands where we can see them!" Marcus froze, startled. "I work for the city," he said, calm, firm, trying not to move too fast. "You can check my—" "Face the wall. Now?" He did as told. The wrench clanged against the pavement as he dropped it. By the time the cuffs clicked around his wrists, 3 kids had stopped mid-swing. A teenager paused his basketball dribble. One mother reached for her child's hand and hurried away. From across the street, Mr. Donnelly, the retired school bus driver who always waved when Marcus arrived, stood on his porch, phone in hand, but didn't record. He just watched, jaw set. Marcus didn't resist. He didn't even raise his voice. But his eyes locked on one of the officers and said more than words could. "I've done more for this country than you'll ever know." Inside the cruiser, the officer beside him flipped through a notepad. "We got a call. You matched the description," he said flatly. "I have ID," Marcus replied. "It's clipped to my belt. We'll check it at the station." Outside the window, the playground continued as if nothing had happened, but one little girl tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Why are they taking the man who fixes the lights?" Her mother didn't answer, just pulled her closer and walked faster. The holding cell was cold, even though it was almost 80 outside. The walls were cinder block gray, the kind of color that makes you feel smaller than you are. Marcus sat on a bench bolted to the floor, hands resting in his lap, wrists still red from the cuffs. He didn't ask for a phone call. He didn't ask for water. He just sat still, back straight, staring ahead like he was waiting for something. Or maybe just trying not to feel anything at all. No one explained what was going on. No one said how long he'd be there. An officer came by, opened a slot in the door, and slid in a paper cup with lukewarm water. Marcus nodded but didn't touch it. A part of him had gone quiet. The same part that used to stay focused when the dust kicked up too thick in the mountains of Kandahar, or when the radio went dark during a mission. That part had saved lives before. Now it was saving his patience. Down the hallway, someone was shouting in another cell. Metal clanged. A buzzer went off. No one came to his door. Eventually, a young officer passed by the small window in Marcus's door. He slowed, glanced in, then checked the clipboard in his hand. Something about his posture shifted, like he wasn't expecting to see a man like Marcus in there. The officer walked off, but not before looking back once. Time moved strangely inside. There was no clock, no sound except footsteps, and the occasional muffled voice. Marcus glanced at the security camera in the corner. It blinked red once, then went still. Later, someone came in to fingerprint him. The woman didn't say much, just motioned for his hands and pressed each finger to the scanner. When she looked down at the screen, she paused. "You're military?" she asked softly. Marcus nodded once. She didn't say anything else, just printed out a copy of the scan and handed it off to the officer waiting outside the door. Back in the cell, Marcus stood now. He couldn't sit anymore. It made his back ache worse. He walked 3 slow paces to the door, then back again. The space wasn't big, but it gave him just enough room to feel like he hadn't disappeared. Eventually, the same young officer from earlier returned. This time he knocked. "Mr. Ellison," he said more gently now. "We're reviewing things. Someone's checking your ID. Just hang tight." Marcus looked at him, then gave a small nod. No anger, no sarcasm. Just the same calm he'd held since they put him in the car. But inside, something had cracked. Not from rage, not from fear, from the knowing that this wasn't the first time a man like him had to prove he belonged, and it probably wouldn't be the last. The video went up that evening. A woman named Elena Torres had been at the park with her 2 kids when it all happened. She hadn't meant to film anything. At first, she was just trying to capture her daughter's first time on the swings, but when the police cars pulled up and the yelling started, she turned her phone slightly and kept recording. Her video didn't show everything, but it showed enough. It caught the moment Marcus dropped his wrench, the moment the officers grabbed his arms, the confusion on the kids' faces. You could hear Elena's little girl in the background asking, "Why are they taking the man who fixes the lights?" That question became the caption. She posted it to Facebook first, then Instagram, and finally, at her niece's suggestion, she uploaded it to TikTok. Within hours, it was everywhere. People watched in silence. Then they started commenting. "This man didn't even flinch. He showed them his ID. They didn't even look. Is fixing a light suspicious now?" The video racked up 80,000 views overnight. By the next morning, it had passed 300,000. Someone in the comments recognized Marcus. "That's Marcus Ellison. He fixed the gate outside my mom's complex last week. He's with the city." Another wrote, "He's a vet. My cousin served with him overseas." A few users dug deeper and found his LinkedIn profile. It was simple. Just listed his years in the Air Force and his current job title, Senior Maintenance Technician, Winston Ridge. His photo showed him smiling slightly, wearing the same Navy shirt and badge he had on when he was arrested. Then the local news picked it up. A journalist named Tyra Benton from Channel 8 shared the video during the evening broadcast. She didn't editorialize. Just played the footage and said, "This is what a lot of people are talking about tonight." That was enough. Suddenly, Marcus's name was trending in local hashtags. #Marcus Ellison, #not a suspect, #Winston Ridge. People started tagging city officials, asking questions. Was he charged? Is he okay? Why didn't they ask him first? A local veterans group reposted the video with a simple message. "We know this man. He served. He saved lives. Now we need to show up for him." By the end of the day, the city's official Facebook page had to shut off comments. The mayor's office released a one-line statement. "We are aware of the situation and gathering facts." But for Marcus, still sitting in that cell with no phone and no clock, none of this had reached him yet. All he knew was silence. Outside, though, that silence had started to break. Colonel Henry Cormack wasn't the kind of man who spent much time online. He preferred his mornings quiet, coffee black, and his news printed. But that Friday, his daughter Megan forwarded him a link with a short message. "Dad, isn't this the man from Alaska?" At first, he almost didn't click, but then curiosity got the better of him. And there it was, a man in a Navy city maintenance shirt, face pressed against a police cruiser window. Even with age and a beard, the man's eyes were unmistakable. It was Marcus Ellison. A memory hit him like a cold gust of wind. 11 years ago, a rescue op in the Chugach Mountains of Alaska. A civilian plane had gone down during a winter storm. Cormack, then still active duty, was coordinating extraction efforts when the blizzard cut visibility to zero. A pararescue team volunteered to go in on foot. Marcus was the lead. He'd trekked almost 3 miles through snow and ice to reach the site. What Cormack remembered most wasn't the mission report or even the recovery itself. It was how Marcus carried a child in his arms for the last quarter mile, refusing to let go even when medics arrived. The photo had never gone public, but Cormack had seen it, and now that same man was being arrested in broad daylight for looking suspicious. He closed his laptop, stood up, and called in a few favors. By noon, he had spoken to the Office of Veteran Affairs, a senior official at the mayor's office, and 2 retired officers who had served with Marcus overseas. Each call led to another name, another connection. The story was moving fast online, but now it was starting to move in the rooms that mattered too. Cormack didn't need to be convinced that this was wrong. What he needed was to make sure no one could ignore it. By late afternoon, he had written a formal letter on U.S. Air Force letterhead, stating Marcus's military record, commendations, and specific acts of valor. He signed it, scanned it, and sent it to both the local courthouse and Winston Ridge's city council. He also made one more call, this one to a journalist he trusted from his days in military public affairs. "I have a story for you," he said simply. "But it's not mine. It's a man's story who shouldn't be forgotten." That night, a new article went up. Decorated veteran detained during routine job. Mistaken identity or something deeper. It included a photo of Marcus from his service days and the line, "He once walked into a snowstorm to save a stranger. Now he's being walked into a cell for fixing a light." And just like that, more people started paying attention. The courthouse in Winston Ridge wasn't big. 2 floors, 1 security desk, and a lobby with coffee that always tasted burned. Still, by Monday morning it felt like the entire town had shown up. Marcus stood outside in a quiet side room with his newly assigned public defender, a young woman named Rachel Lynn. She had joined the case just 2 days earlier and walked in with a folder half full and a face that said she was already behind. Marcus didn't hold it against her. He knew how these things worked. He'd seen chaos before. He just hadn't expected it to follow him home. "You don't have to say anything today," Rachel reminded him gently. "This is just an arraignment. I'll speak for you." Marcus nodded. "I know." He wore a plain gray button-up shirt and the same dark slacks he'd had on when arrested. Someone had ironed the shirt. Maybe the woman from the outreach program who handed it to him with a kind smile. And no questions. His wrists still bore faint marks from the cuffs. In the courtroom, a quiet buzz filled the air. Reporters sat in the back row, notepads out. A few veterans in hats and polos lined the benches, arms crossed, eyes sharp. And then the door opened. Colonel Henry Cormack walked in. He wasn't in uniform, but he didn't need it. His presence alone filled the space. He stood tall, spine straight, jaw tight. People noticed. Even the bailiff paused, unsure whether to speak. The judge, a tall man named Harold Lawson, with tired eyes, and a reputation for moving quickly, entered moments later and took his seat. "Let's begin," he said. Rachel rose. Your Honor, we're requesting a dismissal based on a lack of probable cause. My client was on duty with the city of Winston at the time of the incident. He wore identification, carried a work order, and was performing assigned maintenance duties. The prosecutor, a younger assistant DA named Cooper Hale, didn't push back much. Maybe he knew better. Maybe the rising pressure from the public had finally caught up. Then Colonel Cormack stood up. Your Honor, he said, voice even but firm, I'd like to address the court. Judge Lawson raised an eyebrow. You are? Colonel Henry Cormack, United States Air Force, retired. There was a beat of silence, then a quiet, go ahead. Cormack stepped forward slowly, hands folded behind his back. Marcus Ellison served under my command during multiple domestic and overseas operations. He is not only a trained pararescue specialist, but a man who has risked his life to save others, military and civilian alike. He once walked blind into a blizzard in Alaska to save a family stranded in a plane crash. He succeeded. And never asked for credit? He turned slightly, facing both the bench and the gallery. This man did not deserve handcuffs. He deserved a thank you. A hush fell over the courtroom. You could hear someone sniffle in the back. Even the stenographer paused her typing for a second. Cormack continued, softer now. I don't speak often in public, but when I saw him treated like a threat for doing his job, after all he's done, I couldn't stay silent. The judge sat back, hands folded in front of his mouth, eyes focused. Then he leaned forward and said, This is not a trial. There are no charges filed. This was a detainment gone too far. He turned to the prosecution. Mr. Hale? Hale cleared his throat. The state will not pursue any further action. Judge Lawson nodded. Good. Then we're done here. He banged the gavel once. Mr. Ellison, you're free to go. Marcus didn't move right away. It took a second for the words to register. Then Rachel stood, her hand gently touching his arm. That's it, she whispered. You're free. As Marcus walked toward the exit, Colonel Cormack stepped aside, then gave him a short, firm nod. No words. But Marcus knew what it meant. So did everyone watching. Outside the courthouse, the air felt different, cooler somehow, even with the sun high. People were standing around, murmuring quietly, unsure if they should approach or just watch. Some held their phones, but no one was recording. Not this time. It didn't feel like a moment for content. It felt like something heavier. Marcus stepped down the front steps slowly, his shoes landing on each concrete slab with purpose. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't smiling. He didn't look like a man who had just won anything. He looked like a man who had survived something. Waiting at the curb was his mother, Evelyn Ellison. She stood tall in a soft blue coat, her gray hair neatly pulled back, hands resting on her cane. She didn't speak as he walked up. She didn't cry or reach for him. She just gave a single nod, the kind only a mother gives when her child has been through something hard and come out whole. Marcus lowered his head slightly in return, and for a second, they just stood there. Then she said softly, Let's go home. As they turned to walk to the car, someone from the crowd called out, We're with you, Mr. Ellison. Another voice followed. You didn't deserve that, sir. Marcus didn't stop, but he did glance over. Two of the men standing there wore old veteran caps, hands folded in front of them. They gave him a short, respectful nod, and he returned it. At the car, Evelyn opened the passenger door herself, slowly, deliberately, even though Marcus was about to do it for her. She liked doing things her way. As she settled in, she looked over at him. They ever say sorry in there? She asked, already knowing the answer. Marcus shook his head. Not really. She exhaled, then turned her gaze forward. That's all right. You don't need their sorry to walk free. The ride home was quiet. No music, no talking. Just the soft hum of tires on pavement and the occasional streetlight flicking past the window. Marcus kept his hands on the wheel, steady. even though the skin around his wrist still burned faintly. When they reached their driveway, he didn't go straight inside. Instead, he stood for a moment in the front yard, staring at the porch light. It flickered once, same one he'd meant to fix before all this happened. He'd get to it tomorrow. Tonight, he just wanted to breathe. The invitation came on a Tuesday, slipped into his mailbox in a plain white envelope. It wasn't official looking, no city seal, no stamped return address, just a note from the local youth center written in careful handwriting. Mr. Ellison, we have a group of high school boys who meet every Friday evening. Some of them are having trouble. School, fights, disrespect. We think they need to hear from someone who's been through something real. Would you come talk to them? Nothing formal. Just your presence. T. Harris, Youth Outreach Coordinator. Marcus read the note twice, then set it down on the kitchen table beside his coffee. He didn't answer right away. On Friday, he showed up in a simple olive hoodie, jeans, and clean boots. No medals. No speeches planned. Just him. The room was smaller than he expected. Just a repurposed classroom with a few folding chairs, a whiteboard covered in leftover math problems, and a basketball hoop screwed into the wall above the coat rack. 7 boys sat scattered across the space, ranging from maybe 14 to 17. A few had their hoods up. One wore sunglasses indoors. Most had their arms crossed, like they'd already made up their minds not to care. Marcus stood at the front of the room, hands in his pockets. "I'm not a teacher," he said, "and I'm not here to tell you what to do. I've just seen some things, been through some things." He told them briefly about the Air Force. Not the dramatic parts, no talk of medals or missions, but the quiet things, like how you learn to stay calm even when everything around you is chaos, like how you have to decide every day who you want to be, no matter what the world thinks of you. Then he paused. "A few weeks ago," he said, "I got arrested for doing my job, fixing a light in a park. Somebody thought I looked suspicious." One of the boys in the back snorted. "Just for that?" Marcus nodded. "Yeah, just for that." The room shifted. A few sat up straighter. "I didn't yell, didn't fight. I didn't because I knew something they didn't. I knew who I was, and they couldn't take that away from me, not even with cuffs." A boy near the front raised his hand, a little hesitant. "But weren't you mad? I mean, didn't you want to just lose it?" Marcus looked at him and said simply, "Yeah, but anger's heavy. It's easy to carry at first, but after a while it starts to drag you down. I had to make a choice. Stay angry or stand up." Silence. Then, one by one, questions came. Not big ones, small ones, honest ones. And Marcus answered every single one with the same calm he'd held in that holding cell. By the time the hour ended, the boy with the sunglasses had taken them off. The one who hadn't looked up once was leaning forward, elbows on his knees. As Marcus stepped out into the hallway, Miss Harris caught up to him, eyes wide. "I don't know what you did in there," she said, "but I haven't seen them this quiet in weeks." Marcus gave a small shrug. Sometimes they just need to hear the truth, from someone who doesn't need to shout it. He didn't stay for cookies or a thank you speech. He just walked back to his truck, started the engine, and drove home. The porch light was still flickering when he got there, but the house felt a little warmer. Marcus started showing up every Saturday morning at the community center. No one asked him to. He just did. At first it was small things, tightening door hinges, clearing out the clogged gutters, replacing a leaky faucet in the men's restroom. Then the director, Mr. Alvarez, asked if Marcus would be willing to lead a few weekend sessions with some of the boys. Nothing formal, just basic life skills. How to use tools, how to listen better, how to show up on time. Marcus agreed. Not for attention, not for recognition, just because it felt like the right thing to do. The first week, 2 boys came. One barely spoke. The other wouldn't sit still. By week 4, there were 12. They came for the tools at first, hammers, pliers, drills. But they stayed because Marcus didn't talk down to them. He didn't try to be anyone's savior. He just showed up, steady, patient, and real. He didn't bring up what had happened to him. He didn't need to. The boys already knew. They'd seen the video. Some had even watched his talk at the youth center online. One of them, a quiet kid named Jamal, stayed after one Saturday to help Marcus put away the tools. "My uncle got arrested just for sitting in his car last year," Jamal said softly, wrapping up an extension cord. "Didn't do nothing, just sitting." Marcus didn't respond right away. Then he said, "Sometimes people see what they're afraid of, not what's actually there." Jamal nodded slowly. "You think it'll ever change?" Marcus looked over at him. "Only if people like you grow up and make it." One afternoon, as Marcus finished locking up the back door of the center, a little girl came up to him. She couldn't have been older than 6. She wore bright pink overalls and carried a folded piece of paper in her hand. "My brother says you're like a superhero," she said. Marcus chuckled, kneeling down. "Anything? Is that right?" She nodded and handed him the paper. It was a drawing. Him standing under a tall lamppost, holding a wrench with a big smile on his face. Across the top, in shaky handwriting, it said, "Mr. Marcus saves the day." He looked at it for a long second. "Thank you," he said gently. "Torira. I'll keep this." That night, back at home, his mom noticed the paper tucked on the fridge under a magnet. She glanced at it, then at Marcus. "You fixing more than lights these days," she said. Marcus smiled faintly, adjusting the magnet so the page didn't droop. "Some things," he replied, "just need a little care and time." And for the first time in a long while, the porch light stayed on, steady, warm, and shining through the night. One evening, as Marcus sat on the porch sipping tea beside his mother, a neighbor from down the street walked by with his teenage son. The father paused, looked over, and said, "Thanks for what you're doing at the center. My boy talks about you more than his teachers." Marcus nodded, offering a quiet smile. After they walked off, his mother glanced sideways. "Feels like things are changing," she said. Marcus didn't answer right away. He just looked out at the street, peaceful now, the porch light glowing steady above them. "Maybe not all at once," he finally said, "but piece by piece." Because sometimes healing doesn't come in headlines. It comes in showing up, in listening, in refusing to disappear, even when the world tries to forget you. Marcus never asked to be noticed, but by standing tall through silence, by mentoring the next generation, he reminded people that dignity is not something anyone gives you. It's something you carry. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Black Experiences. Together, we keep voices like Marcus's alive, stories of strength, truth, and quiet courage that the world needs to hear.